introduce here Gary Hartness. Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. Gary Hartness.
For as long as I can remember, I've had an interest in travel. Not the type of travel where you hop in a car, a boat, a plane or a bike. No, the interest in travel that I've had is time travel. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, how fantastically interesting would it be if we could travel in time? I remember the day my interest took a part in my life. At school, we read a book by Peter Bradbury, and it was about time travel. And I came home that day from school and I said to my mum, "Mum, we read a short story today by Peter Bradbury, and I don't think I will ever forget it." And she said, "It's fantastic when that happens when you read a book, isn't it? That happened to me once. What was the name of that book?" And I told her it was a book called The Sound of Thunder. And she said, "Oh my goodness, that's exactly the same book I read as a child, and that has had the same impact on my life too." What an amazing coincidence that is. But I digress, because this is a talk about time travel, not about unusual coincidences. Back from 2004, there's been a Seattle attorney that claims to have travelled in time. His name is Andrew Bisaggio. And being an attorney, I'm sure we all believe him. That he says that he was part of a Project Pegasus that took 7-year-olds and 12-year-olds as part of a secret American scheme to make them teleport or transport back in time. He claims to have been photographed at the Gettysburg Address. I would bring that photograph if I could, but go home, type into Google Lincoln time travel, and you will see this weirdo and what he claims he has done. But again, how fantastic would it be to travel in time? Unfortunately, there are paradoxes and physics involved in time travel that I will now explain a few to you. One of them is called the grandfather paradox. What that means is that people believe that it's impossible to travel back in time. The theory being that you wouldn't be able to go back in time, meet your grandfather and shoot them dead. The paradox being is that you'd never exist, of course. It's quite a frightening and confronting theory to imagine, picturing shooting your grandfather dead, I suppose. Thank goodness they never called it the grandmother paradox. The physics too are quite interesting. I am totally across all this, but I will try and dumb it down for you people of Sandbelt. What the physics say is that it could indeed be possible to travel forward in time. If you got yourself, this is called the twin experiment. If there was one twin that got into a spaceship and travelled at the speed of light, the time on that spaceship actually slows down. So he travels for 20 years, comes back, and he will in fact be younger than his twin that's been stuck here on Earth. The physicists say that that is indeed plausible, but perhaps not possible. But let's suspend all this thought of physics and paradoxes. Let's just expand our minds. Imagine if we could travel in time. Wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic? Which way would you want to go? Would you want to go forward? Or would you want to go back? I, for one, I think I'd have more fun going back. Just imagine you could be an early investor in Apple, an early investor in Microsoft. You could go to Memphis and see a young man named Elvis Presley signing up. You could go to the Cabin Club in Liverpool, see 4 young Beatles in the early stages, sign them up. The world would be your oyster. You could perhaps go before a one-day cricket match there where Australia were playing New Zealand, have a quiet word in Greg Chappell's ear and say, "Listen, I'm not too sure if underarm bowling's the way to go." butterfly effect, whereby time travel, little incidences have major consequences. You can perhaps place yourself on the grassy knoll there, the JFK assassination, and see if there was indeed a lone gunman or what happened on the day. You can perhaps tell JFK, perhaps I don't think an open car is the way to go. These are all the things you can think about if you can travel back in time. I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's far better, I think, than the frightening concept of travelling forward in time. It's just too eerie to imagine waking up 50 years from now, seeing the two Victorian teams having played off in an AFL Grand Final. There you are, the last Saturday in September, the Gold Coast Suns are playing Greater Western Sydney for their Andrew Demetrio Memorial Cup. It's just too frightening to think of that sort of situation. For me, I'd much more happily travel back in time rather than forward in time. So I've explained the physics, and indeed they are a lot more complex than just plonking yourself in a DeLorean, attaching a flux capacitor and firing up to 88 miles per hour. Those who don't know what I'm talking about now my favourite film of all time, that's Back to the Future. Such a good film that I'm going to actually quote two of the favourite lines from it that I failed to remember. But roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. A great line and a great name for a great speech. And another one, maybe you weren't ready for that, but your kids are going to love it. Do you remember when Michael J. Fox at the end there with the guitar impressed them with his guitar playing? It was fantastic. That trilogy gets going over in my house every 6 months or so, and I'm glad to say I've passed that interest on to my children. So time travel's been a huge interest in my life from the day I went to early school years. And it's with that in mind that I now do a little time travelling of myself, all in the comfort of my own backyard. Come with me now as I'm peering through a telescope, looking at the stars that are, in some instances, many millions of light years away. Let's now imagine that I'm able to look at one that's 65 million years ago. It's taken 65 million light years for that light to come down to my telescope. That star may not now be here, but if there's someone on that star looking back at me, we're both 65 million light years away. They're not actually looking at me, they'd be seeing dinosaurs. So this is my own little bit of time travel that I can do from the comfort of my own backyard. I can look back many, many millions of years ago, and you can too. Makes me wonder why the phrase, you can time travel simply by looking up at the sky, has never been coined. Friends, time is almost up for me in this speech now. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you want to do more, go and get yourself out in a calendar, mark a date and say, that's the time for me. Thank you very much.